Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey, the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the Idea Guy Morgan. Russ, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you. I'm going to fall on the sword. You started this 28-day challenge, and I thought, there's no way. He's not going to do it. It's not going to get him the results. But dude, you crushed it, and you look like $1 million.
Thank you, brother.
I'm handing it to you right here.
Well, you usually try to hand it to me. I got a feeling I'm going to get backslapped here in a second. But yes, I along with other people, you've heard me on the show before talk about my temptations and fails with Smoothie King. And for 28 days, I mastered that, along with not eating breakfast, not having carbs except for one night a week, not having sugar. That means no more Starbucks Frappuccinos. And
you mean milkshakes? Yes,
exactly.
Let's be honest.
I mean, it was no dairy. It was to some degree no fun. But for 28 days, I stuck to this regiment that our guest today, he wrote an ebook that challenged you on a 28-day. They called it Shred. And there's this workout routine that went out with it as well. But Joey, I already feel fit, but after the first 7 days, I lost 8 pounds. It was like whammo,
game changer.
Like you can tell, like when
those are results because you didn't have a lot to lose.
I didn't. I really didn't. I mean, where I carried is around my midsection, and those, in our middle of the life section, sometimes we that's where we carry weight, right? And it was just a beautiful thing, and I thought it was such a cool idea for us to bring on somebody who thinks about wellness and fitness completely different than the world does, to be on with us to talk about how that applies, because we obviously think about money completely different than anybody else do.
Well, all right, Russ. So why in the world are we talking about health and wellness on a financial podcast? Why would that even be cognizant here for this?
Well, if you are your number one asset, right?
Absolutely.
Are you taking care of your body like that? I'm not asking you, Joe. I'm asking the person listening to this because we all know that the answer is not right.
Hey, come on, man. But no, I think there is a dissonance between what business owners want their lives to look like from their energy level, from the amount of sleep that they're receiving, from their ability to produce, and what they're actually doing. And I love the fact when we broke this down with Tom, just some of the nuggets and some of the key takeaways, he really simplified it in my mind. But how do we get those things to get more in line?
Well, it's a confusing topic. I mean, he wrote in one of his ebooks that if you go and search health and wellness or health and fitness, like 680 million search results comes back. So how do you know which one to apply? And what I love about the interview we have with Tom is that he's all about what's current. He's very open to say in 10 years, the information that we know today could be completely obsolete. So, but that means that sometimes our doctors are in good-hearted trying to give us good advice, but they're telling us what they learned maybe 10 years ago in a textbook that may be 10 years dated from when they read it.
That's absolutely. It's obsolete for sure. So bottom line, I'm a business owner. I'm trying my best to get my family life, my work-life balance. We talk about these things on the show all the time. This is a critical component. It has to be addressed. Tom is an absolute expert. Like you said, he's going against the grain of the health and wellness industry as a whole, turning it on its head. You are not going to want to miss some of these insights from Tom.
No, I agree. I think you want to make sure to listen to his 3 nuggets. He gives us 3 very simple things to apply. And this is not something that you're going to have to go, man, I don't think I could do that. Because, by the way, that 28 days was tough. But he wanted to make it tough for that 28 days so you would see immediate results.
Right.
But at the end of the day, some of his simple plans that he puts in place is something that I am continuing on because I'm 15 days past that 28 days.
Right.
And yeah, I've gained back, I think, a pound of what I'd lost out of that deal. But what I'm applying, I feel like I'm gaining strength, I'm gaining muscle, and I'm gaining something that's going to hopefully, as he says, have a storage tank for the future. And
don't give it away. Don't give it away.
I know. I tend to do that. All right. So let's jump in to Tom Nikkola. I think you're going to love this interview.
Have you ever had the thought, I really am not saving enough for the future? And at the same time, you're sitting down to write an enormous check to the IRS every single year for $100,000, $250,000, $500,000 in taxes? Guess what? We just found the money that you should be saving, and it's been under your nose the entire time. Go to freetaxwebinar.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com and learn how the wealthy are paying less in taxes. You can implement these strategies so that the next check you write will be to your financial future and not to the IRS. Welcome into the show, Tom Nikkola, health and wellness expert. Man, we're so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I am happy to be here.
Tom, man, it's awesome that we finally get to talk a little bit about something that I'm passionate about. If you listen to our show,
you said I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Like you left me out of that. Like usually we're together on stuff. Why are you leaving me out of the conversation on that?
Tom listens to our show. He knows that like there's one of us that exercises our mouth and one of us that exercises our body.
Dude, I'm all for some health without Wall Street, okay? I've got to get me some health without Wall Street.
All right, so Tom, you're going to have fun with this crowd today because
right on.
We are all about mindset and investing in ourselves. And I know that you have said this, and I've kind of read it in one of your papers or ebooks. You said behavior change is all about mindset. How does that apply in the health and wellness space?
Well, when you look at what has gotten us into the state that the majority of the population is in today, we haven't accidentally gained weight. We haven't accidentally gotten fat or overweight or diseased or anything like that. It's all a process of the daily habits or the weekly habits that we do or don't do. So the habit of not exercising, the habit of eating poorly, the habit of not getting enough sleep. We tend to think of them as choices, but most of the stuff that gets us into it, an unhealthy state is stuff that we don't even think about. We do it without giving any thought to. And so when it comes to making long-lasting change, we have to, I believe, and what I've seen over the past 2 decades as a fitness professional, is a large part of my responsibility is to help people replace some of the habits that are sending them in the wrong direction, I guess, if you will. Kind of like you do with finances.
Yeah, habits are hard to break, right? It's easier to learn something than it is to unlearn, right? I mean, we show a video on our website all the time. This backwards bicycle. It's this cognitive bias that we put ourselves in, and we learn something as a kid and we apply it over and over again. And that really has to happen into eating, right? I mean, one of the things that we struggle with is just information that may be old or outdated.
Right. Yep. And it's part of it is the choice, the behaviors or the actions that we take either consciously or unconsciously. And part of it too is just the story that we tell ourselves. I mean, it's no different than people that say, I never win anything, or I've always struggled, or I'll never be rich or anything like that. It's the same story of, well, I can't lose weight, or I've always been overweight, or I have a slow metabolism. And we keep telling these things over and over again until they become the excuses we use to not change.
Yeah. Or the self-fulfilling prophecy right there.
Yes.
Right? And that's what's going to happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. What is it? Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or the age-old book, As a Man Thinketh, right? I mean, these are things that we have to be thinking, and it is about how we think. And one of our mentors said that all the time. You got to be thinking about your thinking. And if it's not positive, you're going to start fulfilling, as Joey said, that prophecy.
Yeah.
And so tell us, so you obviously have a history where one, you're a cancer survivor, right? You had to
Right.
overcome health issues as early as, did you say 5 years old?
Yep. I was diagnosed with leukemia at age 5.
Wow.
And fortunately, it wasn't that long before I got it that they found the cure for it. So fortunately, they were
Oh,
able to
wow.
cure it. And of course, that at age 5, a kid doesn't know that much of what's going on. It probably put my parents through more of turmoil than it did for me. But uh, between age 5 and age 18, I spent a lot of time at the Mayo Clinic and got to know the doctors well, got to see what healthcare was all about, and it got me really passionate about health and wellness. The other interesting thing, as I mentioned before we got started, is the part of the treatment when I had leukemia was prednisone, and prednisone creates an insatiable appetite. So I think at age 5, I could eat a dozen eggs in one sitting.
Oh,
And because of that insatiable appetite, I got pretty fat, and so I was a fat kid. My nickname was CP, chubby and porky. when I was when I
Wow.
was in elementary school and early high school and middle school, and so a number of those things got me really passionate about the idea of becoming healthier and fitter. And I suppose it could have gone another direction where I could have just said, well, I'm just going to be fat for the rest of my life.
right.
But I believe we can figure stuff out, whatever problem we're facing, and that was one of mine at an early age.
Wow. Yeah, you had every reason or excuse that you could have gone the other way, but the mindset you chose was to go the healthy route and the fit route,
Mm-hmm.
and to find the solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Tom. So I'm just thinking about myself, Russ. Those of us who are listening to this are successful entrepreneurs. Like, we want all the outcomes of a healthy lifestyle.
Yes.
We want the energy to have time at home. Like, we talk about getting our time back, not trading time for money all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a lot of things I feel like are standing in our way when it comes to health. We already talked about the mindset. What are the other things as you're engaging with clients, you're engaging with people who are involved in your programs? What are the other big things that are standing in their way?
Uh, I think the biggest thing when you talk about wanting to be healthier or fitter or leaner is understanding that that's not a very powerful motivator. So
Mm.
we will run from the stuff that we fear at a lot faster pace than we will run toward the things that we desire. And so what I try to identify with people when I can is the stuff that they don't want to have. So for example, I'll sometimes say that the motivation to lose a few belt sizes isn't as powerful as the motivation to not lose a foot due to diabetes. If I'm
Yeah.
talking to someone with diabetes, and sometimes we say things like that and you can't actually envision it. And Vanessa and I, my wife, were just walking down the street downtown Minneapolis a couple of days ago, and we walked by a guy who is in a wheelchair, and his feet were uncovered, and he had all of the edema of that you see in diabetes, and that that picture is so striking in my head. But when you talk to the average person who's on the path toward diabetes or the path toward obesity or cardiovascular disease, it doesn't really mean anything to them until they get hit with something like, I'm gonna die, and then they'll dramatically change things because they no longer want to die. But the idea that, I want to improve my cardiovascular fitness, that's so weak. It's such a weak motivation.
Right.
Right.
um, if someone's gone through bankruptcy before, sometimes that will be their motivator to get rich, and I never want to experience that again.
Right.
I actually did go through bankruptcy. I never want to go through that ever again, and I never want to put myself in a financial decision. So there has to be something more powerful driving you than just the idea of being a little bit better. I
No,
guess
but
is
this,
where I'd start.
Well, I think that we get into this mindset of scarcity versus abundance in a lot of things, whether it's in
Hmm.
money or in health and fitness. I mean, I've read a lot of your ebooks, and as digging through those, one of the things that I uncovered is that we can't restrict our diet in a calorie mindset in order to have pure success, because
Right.
as you said, I will only do that for so long before ultimately I will start feeding myself back those things that I really liked, and I will play it off in my mind like, well, but I really just want to eat the foods that I really want to eat, and I'm okay with that. You start telling yourself that, so you have to have some motivator. I mean, my dad, you talking about diabetes, the point hits home with me. My father was diagnosed with diabetes in his mid 30s, and has battled it forever. But now, as he's in his 70s, you can see it. You're going to see it affecting his eyes, his feet, his ability to hear. I mean, his kidneys. I mean, his heart. You name it. That is to me, one of the worst diseases that exists, because it starts attacking all of these other systems in our body. And his was not brought on because of being obese, but now that he's at a point where his body's breaking down, he's becoming obese. Like
Right.
that diet or lack thereof early on in life, and the breaking down of his pancreas not performing that function properly is crushing him. And so I see that, and that's always a reminder in the back of my brain. And maybe that's why I do try to make better decisions, because I know ultimately I see this could be my future if I'm not careful.
Absolutely. And we don't have to go deep on this, but I do want to point it out, because this could be a reality for someone who's listening. You said my dad originally didn't have, he wasn't obese, even though he was developing diabetes. And about 20% of those with prediabetes and diabetes are not overweight. And that is something that can come later, but it brings up the importance of actually getting your labs tested on an annual basis, and keeping track of what's going on inside. Because just because somebody's got an amazing looking house on the outside with a perfectly manicured garden, it doesn't mean that things are good on the inside. And that's exactly the same with our bodies too.
So Tom, that's a great analogy, but I don't want to miss this, because as I heard you talking about, the motivator has to be there. The negative that we're trying to keep away from has to be there for all this to take place. For the person that doesn't have the picture, like Russ is mentioning of his dad, my dad also got diabetes in his early 30s. And same thing. I've seen his body break down, and he's trying to do certain things. But for somebody that doesn't have that, how do you then harness that? How do you help them? Or is it just something that someone has to do on their own?
Well, like if I'm consulting with them, we'll talk about what their fears are, what their motivators are. And there's usually something that, is inside. Maybe it isn't health related. Maybe it's, a guy may say, when we get really raw, he might say, I fear the idea that my wife might not look at me the same. And I mean, let's face it, if we were healthy and fit when we got married, and then we got sloppy and developed a major dad bod as time went on, hey, it's preventable is the issue. And so we can fix that. And so for some guys that, their motivation is, I want my wife to think I'm sexy looking, and so, but looking good is one thing. The rawness and the power of him, imagining the idea that she doesn't look at me the same, it's a little bit more gut wrenching and powerful as a motivator to inspire change.
Well, what's the old analogy? You've outkicked your coverage. But if you quit, you don't want to get too far behind that, right? So you create a decent offense on your own to protect that. Otherwise,
absolutely.
I could take that analogy way too far, probably, but I'll stop. I know this though. I mean, if we are our best asset, and we
Hmm.
preset constantly on our show, internally though, as our bodies are not performing at the highest levels, doesn't it create more stress on us as it's breaking down? Like we're thinking through, like I need to be more productive, I need to be more active, but I can't do it because my body's not there. I can't do it. So it's like almost it's compounding the problem. Do you ever see that with people that come to you for the first time or start talking to you?
Oh, without question. I mean, if you were to go into a corporate office and start talking with people, probably 80% of them would talk about their afternoon lull. Like how much productivity happens in a business after lunch, from lunchtime until about 3 o'clock, most people are in the days. I mean, think about that over the course of 50 weeks a year
Oh,
for 3 hours. How much lost productivity is just that one thing because of the choice they made for what they ate for lunch? They ate a sandwich that had barely any protein in it, had some chips, and then a soda with it. I mean, that's a disaster for productivity by itself. So what we do to our bodies physically has an immediate effect on our brain and vice versa as well. The problem is that we can't see what's going on in our brain, and our bodies tend to lag behind the disruption we're creating inside. So we could be 10 years down the road before we start showing signs on the outside of all the problems we have going on the inside.
wow.
And so, yeah, I don't know if I can
No,
say any
no,
more on that
that's, I
one.
mean, so I had the pleasure of meeting you, and I guess that was in February, and I sat next to you at our lunch, and
Yeah.
intentionally, because it's like, okay, this guy out of a room of 55 people is the most fit by far, and you may have been one of the older people in the room too, and it was like, okay, I need to like pony up next to you and figure out what's going on. And
Start
I
taking
remember
notes.
exactly. I need to make sure that I get in this details, and that's something that's interesting to me. But I remember you saying protein. I think
Yep.
you made this comment during your talk to guys, like, look, it's hard to stop to break the habits that you've had forever. So if
Right.
you're eating cereal every day for breakfast, I'm not going to tell you stop that immediately. It's not good for you, but I'm not going to say stop that immediately because it's going to be hard. But you said, I will tell you to add protein first.
Yes.
Explain that. Like, how does adding protein into the diet help us with our bodies?
So a few things. One is protein is necessary for building lean body mass, for repairing just about any tissue in the body. So we need protein, basically just to sustain life. We can get by without carbohydrates. We can get by without most fat, other than some essential fatty acids. We can't get by with a lack of protein. So that's one thing. Second is protein by far is the most satiating or appetite suppressing type of macronutrient. So you got carbs, fat, and protein. And when people eat more protein, they inevitably displace some of the fat and carbohydrates that they would otherwise eat. So what I always tell clients as I'm getting them down the path of eating a higher protein diet and making that a habit is, each time you sit down to eat your protein portion first. So, for Russ, when you were doing the diet recently, if you sat down to eat 10 ounces, 12 ounces of meat, eat all of that. And if you were just getting started, I'd say eat all of that. And then if you still want your chips and fries and whatever, go for it. But the chance of you actually eating much of that extra starch or extra fat after you've eaten all that protein, it's pretty low because you're going to be so full.
Right.
So that it's satiating. The third thing is it does have more of a metabolic effect, or it's called the thermic effect of food. So about 23 to 28% of the calories that are found in protein have to be burned in the process of digestion and assimilation. It's a lot of work for your body to break down a steak or a chicken breast or a piece of fish compared to a potato or some butter or something like that. So 23 to 28% for protein, 5 to 8% for carbohydrates. So, if you had 100 calories of pure protein, 23 to 28 calories have to be burned just to break it down and assimilate it. 5 to 8 calories for carbs, and then it's 2 to 3 calories per 100, or 2 to 3% for fat. So by eating more protein, you do have a little bit more of a thermic effect. That's why you get the meat sweats at a Brazilian steakhouse.
Mm,
And then
I know that as well.
yes. So those are the primary reasons. And then the one thing that I'll say is, like, if there was someone who's let's say a dietitian reading or listening to this podcast or something, or they just heard from a friend, there's this myth, as there's tons of myths we could cover over the span of hours and hours. There's this myth that if you eat too much protein, it makes you fat. And so there was actually a friend of mine at one of the universities in Florida did a study on it, where they overfed people. They had them eat 2 grams of protein per pound body weight. My recommendation is a gram per pound for most people, unless they have a pre-existing kidney disease. They had these guys eat 2 grams per pound. So what that means is, if you're listening to this and you're 200 pounds, that's 400 grams of protein. There's about 6 to 7 grams per ounce of meat. So if you start doing the math, it's a ridiculous amount of protein. They had to do a lot of whey shakes as well, just to try to get all that in. At the end of I think it was a 12-week study. At the end of the 12-week study, they ate way more calories than equations said they should. So theoretically, they should have gained weight. Most people would say if you overeat protein, you're going to gain weight. Their health parameters actually improved slightly. They saw no change in scale weight, and some of them saw an improvement in body fat percentage. So they gained a little bit of muscle, lost a little bit of fat by eating just an insane amount of protein. So for anyone who's listening and they're like, oh, high protein diets, if you eat too much, they're gonna make you fat. Nope, they don't. So it's a very safe macronutrient.
Well, I think that's part of the thing, is that information is constantly changing, and some of the information that we're being given is incorrect, right?
So
I mean, we know that in the financial world, right? We get on here, we're constantly battling the bad information that exists, and it's I'm replying every other day, it seems like, to we have a pretty famous video where we rebuke one of the famous financial personalities out there. People get really pissed at us about it. And they argue with us constantly about it, not the facts. They're just really mad that we've called out their favorite friend. But it's, sometimes it's holding on to this information, and we've got to be willing to change. When the information has changed, we need to change with it.
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Yes, absolutely. And so we got started in talking about the idea that rather than saying stop eating this, or let's cut back on calories, or start restricting, the way that I get going with people is eat more protein. I don't care what else you eat. You can stop at McDonald's if you want to, and some people will probably gasp when I say that. But if that's your thing, go ahead. As long as you start eating more protein, by all means, stick with those habits. And the reason that I say that is the conventional advice is eat fewer calories. Let's stop eating carbohydrates, or cut back on fat, or cut back on all of these foods that might not be so good for you. And in the financial world, I see a lot of times people talking about how they're on a new budget, and they're cutting back. And the idea always is, stop going to Starbucks. Well, there's a Starbucks a block away from here, from where we live, downtown Minneapolis. And if I love Starbucks, and that's part of what gets me going each morning, is that warm cup of coffee in my hand. And every day I have to walk by Starbucks on the way to work, and I'm out of willpower not stopping in there. Eventually I'm going to crack, because all that I'm doing is living in this poverty mindset of I gotta restrict, instead of saying, well, is there a way for me to make an extra $5? Or is there something that I don't care about as much that maybe I don't need? But this idea in fitness that I have to exercise and sweat like crazy and burn all sorts of calories, which that doesn't That doesn't work long term, nor does the idea of cutting back on calories, which actually can be have a negative effect on weight loss. That doesn't work. It doesn't work mentally. It doesn't work physically. And just like the poverty mindset doesn't work financially.
Well,
Well,
okay, real quick, I got to jump in here, Jared, because you
Okay,
just
cut me off.
you just threw out a big thing that most people is going to challenge the way that they think, which I love. You just hit like two things that most people believe. I've got to burn more calories than I consume. It is out there forever, right?
Yep.
I've
It's
got
like
to
a
go.
given. Yeah.
I got to be what is it? Sweating to the oldies. I mean, taking you back to Richard Simmons, right? It's sweat
Right.
down. I got to be burning more calories than I'm consuming. That's the way I lose weight. And you just said, nah, not necessarily.
Yes.
Explain that.
Your body is a great economist. So what happens is when we go out and we're going to take on a running program, for example, and so I'm going to burn an extra 400 calories with preparing for this half marathon I'm going to do. Well, what happens, and the research backs this up, is people sit more the rest of the day to offset the calories that they burned. On top of that, your body says, hey, you want to be a runner? Great, let's build a runner's body and shed some of this muscle tissue. Well, when you lose muscle, you lose the capacity to store carbohydrates, which makes you more likely to gain fat if you're eating a higher carb diet. What are runners told? Eat lots of carbs so that you can fuel your runs, but now you don't have any place to put them because your glycogen storage capacity goes down. So on one hand, burn more calories. Your body's going to adjust how many calories you burn during the day by having you move less. It can also lower your thyroid production, which is your master regulator, your thermostat, if you will, of how many calories you burn to match what it is that you're consuming. So people eat fewer calories and they burn more, that the alarm bells go off for your body. Hey, what's going on? Stress hormones can go up, cortisol levels can go up. So there's all of these hormonal things that take place. And the way that I describe weight management is it's more of mastering your hormones than it is figuring out the right calorie levels. Because if your hormones are balanced, if your hormones are working properly, you will burn an appropriate number of calories to stay lean. So is there some validity? I don't want someone to say, well, he says calories in, calories out doesn't work. It does work, but it's not because of you doing the work to manage your calories. Your body does that for you when you eat appropriately, when you're continuing to build muscle tissue through strength training, getting enough sleep, which is an enormous factor in all of this, is the amount of sleep that we're getting. And just maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So it isn't about calories. And I think, as you've seen for yourself, Russ, and you were talking about this before we got started, a lot of the other guys they eat more actual calories than they had leading up to getting into the programming, but it's the right types of calories that help them to get lean.
Well, Tom, I love what you're saying, because to me, it's cutting through the noise by going back to the basics. It's very simple. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like you have this newfangled scientific method that you've created with blah blah blah, all these different things that you're trying to sell. It's
right.
I mean, what I'm hearing you say, and I want you to kind of reiterate this as somebody's saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. It makes sense. I do need to make a change. I want to be more productive. I want to have more strength. I want to have more energy. So the plan you had outlined for them, it sounds like at least number 1 or 2 is eat protein.
Yep.
Right? Strength training. And then
correct.
Number 3, sleep.
Yes.
So as the guy that just has a 10-week-old at home, tell me a little bit about sleep, or the lack thereof, because I'm sitting here pounding coffee just to make sure we get through the interview.
Yeah, I hear you. I will say having a newborn is the one hall pass that you get on sleep. So
okay,
that's the one season in life where it can be okay. But I will say, I can see your office behind you, and I think that's a couch right over your shoulder. So if you want to put the shades down and take a little nap, I would strongly recommend that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those three, strength training, high protein diet, and sleep are like if somebody said, going back to, we talked about diabetes earlier, if somebody said I need to control my diabetes, those three act synergistically in almost every health and wellness goal that someone might talk about. Because if we don't get enough sleep, we're more insulin resistant the next day. Like a lack of sleep, that next day we can't handle carbohydrates as well.
Wow.
It also causes muscle loss if we're chronically not getting enough sleep. The protein helps to slow down the muscle loss from sleep, but if I think what it comes down to, I probably should have started with this, is my goal, and all of the advice that I give is that someone looks and feels better today, and they get to their later years, 60, 70, 80, 90, and they say, holy cow, I look way better and feel way better than anyone in my age group now, because of what I've done over the past 10 or 20 or 30 years leading up to that. So if longevity, health, and fitness are important, building muscle, getting enough sleep, which is important for your brain as well, and eating a high protein diet, those are the three most important foundational factors. Now, going back to another thing that we brought up earlier, is there's all this confusion, and people are like, well, okay, Tom, you said what does it have to be grass-fed protein from a cow that was massaged in Japan and it got like extra hours of sleep and got to sleep on a sleep number bed? I mean, there's like the lengths that people go to say it has to be this perfect thing if they're going to eat protein. It has to be this perfect program if they're going to do strength training. That keeps people from getting started.
Right.
Like, just start. And so if someone, and that's why I brought up the McDonald's thing, because if somebody is, if they're stuck on going to McDonald's, okay, rather than just doing chicken nuggets, get a bigger burger or something like that, or get a chicken sandwich or something where you're getting more protein for your meal, and start there. Just start with more protein. Well, does it have to be grass-fed? I don't care if it's grass-fed. Does it have to be organic? I don't care if it's organic. Just start.
Well,
and then the next,
McDonald's has all grass-fed and organic, doesn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
I wish. I wish. So it's just start, and then once you are in the habit of getting sleep, well, I read that if I'm going to get sleep, it's got to be in an all black room, and I have to wear blue blocking glasses for an hour beforehand, and I have to put on this soothing music. Okay, you can do all of that, but just start going to bed earlier. It doesn't. All that other stuff doesn't matter yet. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, this hits. I mean, this hits home with me. I love sleep, so I will make sure I share this as much as I can with my wife, so that she hears this. Sleep is good. I was accused as a kid by my family of having some sort of African sleeping sickness, because I 12, 13 hours easy, and I still like a good nap. So I appreciate that support, Tom. Strength. Here is one thing I want to spend a little time, and then we need to let you go. This is a topic that I'm just passionate about. I love this. Strength training is one, though, that is challenging to me. I'm big in exercise. Our listeners have heard us talk a lot about the kind of classes we go to. I make the joke that I'm faster than most 40 to 50-year-old women. I prove it on a weekly basis in some of these classes that we do. Now, at the end of the day, we don't lift a lot of weights in there. It's mostly interval training, kind of CrossFit type stuff. And you're saying strength training, though, actually has a lot more benefits for my body than that. Would you just break that down really quickly? Because the Iron Tribe is big here in the area that we're in. CrossFit is big everywhere. Interval training, circuit training. You're seeing this pop up and be very popular. how do you approach that and compare it to the benefits of actually just a good strength training regimen?
Sure. So I think that the first thing is keeping in mind the goal is to build lean body mass or build muscle tissue, because muscle tissue, I always say it's your quality of life savings account. So the more of it that you, and savings is a bad analogy since we don't, savings accounts don't do a whole lot for us. But I'll have to think of a new phrase for that. But anyway, that's what I've always said. So when we reach an age, it could be 60, 70, 80, at some point, we're going to reach a state physiologically where we lose muscle and bone density at an accelerated rate. And the more of it that we have when we reach that state, the longer we can last performing well, feeling well, functioning well, before we start feeling the major effects of old age. And so, number one, that's the goal is what can I do to layer on more lean body mass or muscle tissue? With that in mind, there's two factors. One is putting a sufficient amount of stress on the muscle to cause it to grow. And two is doing it in a way where you avoid injury. So what happens is a lot of times people will do these higher intensity, faster paced exercise programs, and they don't have a good technique. They don't understand the proper form on exercise. And so they're doing hundreds of squats, but they're not even squatting correctly to begin with. And so then that not only causes a change in how they move, because it can lead to injuries, but they're also not going to build the muscle appropriately. The other factor is the real high repetition stuff doesn't build lean body mass. So it's okay to do that form of exercise if you like the entertainment of it, if you like the community of it. But the foundation of strength training has to be pure strength training, where you're doing a handful of sets, lower repetitions, anywhere from three reps up to 15, maybe 20 reps of a set. And it's a controlled, purposeful, intentional movement. So a back squat, putting a bar on your back and squatting for 10 or 20 reps is going to be way more effective for building strength in the legs, mobility in the legs, lean body mass in the legs, than doing hundreds of squats in a class that you've done for several months or even years. So, and I shared this, I'll just, since I said class, I'll just share this. And I shared this with you, Russ, last week. I was personal training at the Woodbury Lifetime here in Minnesota. This was back in 2002 or 3. The guy came out of a group fitness class just drenched in sweat, beet red. I thought his face was red because he was working so hard, but he was actually pissed. Came up to the desk. I was standing there, I'm like, hey, how can I help you? He said, I am so frustrated with these classes. I have been coming here 4 or 5 days a week for it was either months or years, what he said, and I have not lost any weight. What is the problem with these classes? And I was like, well, how do you mean? It's like, I'm doing all of this work and I'm not seeing any results. Why don't they work? And I said, are the classes the only thing that you're doing? Yes. I'm, as you can see, I'm sweating like crazy. I'm burning all kinds of calories. I should be in great shape. And he was pretty overweight. I didn't say that. And I said, well, here's the thing. These classes, if you're doing them week after week after week, are not going to get you lean. There's 2 things that you need to do if you want to get lean. One is we need to talk about your diet. And 2, we should probably do a different form of exercise. And so we talked for maybe 60 seconds, 90 seconds. And he said, no, I want to do these classes. I'm not going to change what I'm doing, but I'm pissed that I'm not getting any results. I was like, oh my gosh.
Sounds good.
Can you say that again? I want to record it and play it back for you. But that's, it might not be as dramatic as that, but I see that all the time. People will go back to the Weight Watchers diet that they've tried again and again and again, and it only worked the first time because every time they do it afterwards, their body reacts so quickly this restrictive diet that they don't see any results. But they keep trying and they keep trying instead of saying, you know what, maybe I should go a different route. Maybe I should think a little bit differently. So anyway.
Well, and that is so great. I think that's a good thing for us to end on, because Tom, we say all the time, if you want the same success that the majority of people have, continue to follow that advice. Because
Yes.
that
Yes.
The herd.
Look around you, whether it's fitness or financial fitness, it is
Yes.
not well. It's the minority of people out there who are doing things completely different, who are
Yes.
having enormous success. And if that's what you want, if you want success, don't look to the world for the advice. You're going to have to look to a very select few people that are giving it to you, and it's going to sound different to you than what you're hearing. But there's where success lies. And I love what you've said so far, Tom. If our listeners want to get access to you, learn more about you, where can we point them to so they can get that information?
The easiest would be tomnikkola.com, TOMNIKKOLA.com.
Man, this is so awesome. Thank you again for joining us. I can't wait to have the success story of the stallion.
Yes.
Actually looking like a stallion. I'm already envisioning him. It's going to be awesome. Stay tuned. We're going to have to do a before stallion picture and an after stallion picture. And to you, Tom.
I want to just mention too, when I first heard you talk, Russ, at that event you mentioned earlier, and you basically said, the advice that you're getting from everywhere else, there's a different way of looking at things, and there's a better way. And that when I heard you talk and when I listened to the podcasts up to this point, I'm like, these are my people, because what you just said, if you want to follow the advice that the rest of the world is following, you're going to get the results that the rest of the world is getting.
Yeah.
And it's the financial stuff and the fitness stuff it's all about, who is it you're following and what are the beliefs, and if you follow the herd, you're going to look like the herd. So I applaud you guys for what you've done, and I'm so glad that you actually came to that event and I got to hear from you, and here we are today.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.